And let's talk about this whole thing with level 5 leadership, because out of everything that I've read in a business book, I mean, I've learned about business formally, and I've also learned about business ideas via business books and stuff. Out of everything I've learned informally, probably the idea of the level 5 leader is something that I didn't get it when I first read it. I don't think anybody would. You really have to think about why this is what it is in order to understand it. So this comes from a book called Good to Great by Jim Collins. It was pretty much must-read stuff among most of the managers I worked with about 15 years ago or so. It's a little dated these days. For example, I think one of the Good to Great companies is Circuit City. So using some older source data for a study and whatnot. But one of the ideas, and this is the reason why we're on this Jim Cascade blog, because I went looking for graphics related to this idea, and this actually is straight out of the book. One of the ideas is this whole thing with level 5 leadership. Now, one of the things that we have to deal with here with regards to content creation is this whole idea that you own what you oversee as a content creator. You're managing not only what you're doing, but what your team is doing, how it looks to others. Everything fundamentally goes back to you. And this gets into the whole difference between being a boss and being a leader. Being a leader is not about being a boss. And the idea that level 5 leadership represents or introduces that, actually, is the idea that the best leaders in business are actually pretty paradoxical. And because it's a paradox, it's going to be hard to understand. Might even give you a headache trying to figure it out. But once it clicks, then you're like, there's no other way this idea could exist. So I'm thinking about content creation, and I'm thinking about YouTubers and Twitch streamers, and I'm thinking about the attitudes they have towards their moderation team, their viewers, their critics. And somehow or another, with everything that's been going on, I was brought back to this idea right here. Level 5 executive builds enduring greatness through a paradoxical blend of personal humility and professional will. Sounds all business book-y. But here's the thing, if you read Good to Great, and you read about this whole idea of level 5 leadership, one of the things you're going to run into is this idea that when your team succeeds, you don't take the credit for it. You make sure your team gets credit, not you. So you're incredibly humble when your team succeeds, but you're incredibly selfish when your team fails. When your team fails, it is though you personally are responsible for all of it. Even if you can identify a root cause, even if you can identify people who are responsible for why your team failed. So this doesn't make any sense. I've been thinking a lot about it, though, with regards to the way people handle controversy on these platforms. And the more I thought about that, the more I realized that this paradox actually does make sense. If you are truly a leader, your job is to lead. And quite frankly, you want to do the best job possible as a leader. So let's think about this. The paradox between someone who's incredibly humble, even though they're very much large and in charge. When the team succeeds, the team is responsible. They don't take the credit for themselves. When the team fails, they are responsible. They take the blame. Even if they have a root cause, even if they know who it was or what it was, they still are responsible for it. Why? Shouldn't it be the other way around? You are in charge, and it is your leadership that drove the results, right? Well, here's the issue with that. Let's start with when the team fails, it's your fault. Even if you discipline somebody, even if you fire somebody, you are still responsible for the failure. Why? Because you're a leader. You are the one who is in charge. You are responsible for delivering the results, and you didn't. So because you own what you oversee. What happens on your watch? You own it. You own the results or lack thereof. So, when your team fails, you are in charge. It happened on your watch. You are responsible. If you try and finger point or shift the blame or throw someone under the bus or cloak and dagger somebody, you are walking away from your responsibilities as a leader. to own what happened. See what I mean? If you don't take responsibility for your team's failures as a leader, you're not really being a leader. Because you're shrinking away from your responsibilities at a time when they matter the most, which is you failed and you need to figure out how to not fail again. Suddenly this starts to make sense on that side. Now let's take the other side here. Your team is successful. Your leadership brought results. Why do you not take credit for it? Because if you take credit for your team's success and you're not super humble about it and give the team the proper credit that they deserve for all their hard work, you're not being a good leader either. Matter of fact, it's questionable as to whether you actually are a leader. So on the flip side, your team succeeds. You win. If you don't give your people proper credit for the hard work that they did, you're not being a good leader because you're denying proper credit where credit is due. You're taking for yourself something that you don't deserve by taking credit for other people's hard work. You take credit for your hard work, sure, but not other people's. You're taking something from them if you do that and abusing your position as a leader if you pass off their hard work or their good ideas as your own. You're not a good leader. Now let's suppose you're right and you did actually drive the results yourself. You're not a good leader because the people working for you are incompetent. That's right. If you really did all the work, why did you have those people? So either you're right and you're not a good leader because your team is incompetent and you're bailing them out, or you're wrong and you're not a good leader because you take the credit for other people's hard work. In both cases, you are less of a proper leader because of that. See what I mean? The best people you will work with and the best people you will work for are the people who paradoxically give their team the credit when they succeed and take personal responsibility when they fail. That's it. And you know, what can you do with this? It sounds like business book stuff. It sounds academic, synthetic, like there's no real-world applications. You can use this to evaluate who you work for to see if you're working for good people or not. I mean, here's a whole hierarchy and whatnot. I mean, here's this. You can go off of this if you want, excuse me. But at the very same time, if you have, for example, someone who doesn't fit the level 5 thing, they're not the best people to be working for. If you're working for somebody who takes credit for your hard work, those are not the best people to sell you, to essentially sell your skills and expertise to. Those are not your best customers. If you have a boss who takes credit for what you do, they're not the best people to be working for. They're not a good leader. The end. At the same time, if your team fails and your boss finger points, doesn't take blame, shuffles the blame around, and tries to throw you under the bus, cloak and dagger you, get you in trouble with HR. Now, if you're not meeting the requirements of your job, that's an objective failure of you not doing what you're supposed to have done when you got into that. That's a separate discussion. But if you work for somebody who will not take responsibility when things go wrong, that's not the best person to be working for. So this is actually a giant acid test, if you will, or a personality test as to whether you're working for good people or not. Do you want to work for good leaders? If the answer is yes, you want to work for people who take responsibility when things go wrong and give you the credit because you were part of a good team that made it happen when things go right. You don't want to work for people that take credit for your hard work, and you don't want to work for people who blame shift everything to you when things go wrong and won't be responsible. Those are not the best people to work for. So when you get, for example, when unfair stuff happens to you because of bad leadership that you were working for, you can know they were bad leadership objectively. And that's the thing. How does this apply to content creation then? Let's just leave this on the screen for the rest of the discussion. Content creation puts you in charge of something, but the question is, are you a boss or are you a leader? Are you bragging about, oh, I'm making progress, I'm making progress, or are you humbly giving others the credit they deserve for their hard work? That's the thing. Because if you're not paradoxical, you are less of a good leader simply by virtue of what you are doing. It comes with the turf. It doesn't make any sense when you first read it in a business book. But the more you think about it and the more you apply it to various situations that you may have dealt with in real life, or you may be doing a what-if thing in your head, that's the thing. It makes sense, even though it doesn't make any sense when you first read it in the business book. So, there you go. With content creators, you can tell a lot about their personality and whether or not they have baggage and whether or not they're worth your time and support via the way they conduct themselves as leaders, because they are essentially a leader of what it is that they're doing, whether it's YouTube videos, streaming, some combination of both, or how they come across to others, or even how they are on their various social medias. What kinds of people are they? Are they the kinds of people that can be responsible for what it is that they do? Are they? We can go back to the blog now. I think we've talked about this graphic enough. JamesCascade.com for the Jim Cascade blog here, which has this humility plus will equals level 5. It's from August of 2019. So, but it has this thing which comes out of good to great. Level 5, let's look at some of this. Level 5 leaders are fanatically driven, infected with an incurable need to produce results. They will sell the mills or fire their brother if that's what it takes to make the company great. But the big thing is, it's also part of being on a team and understanding that when you join a team, it's not about you anymore. It's about you and your team being able to do something that you cannot do on your own. And again, when people drift from good leadership, they're going to turn into the people. They're going to turn into the people who slip from this, who take responsibility for other people's hard work, and don't take responsibility when the team comes up short, even though they're in charge of the team and they own what they oversee. It happened on their watch. Now, you can just punch level 5 leadership into Google and get all kinds of results for people talking about this, or go grab Good to Great, look it up for yourself. But it's one of those things that it's like math. It seems synthetic until you find a use for it, and then you're like, yeah, this stuff's awesome. So you don't understand it when someone's droning in a classroom or a lecture hall and you think it's boring, but then you find a use for it somewhere and you're like, whoa, this really was useful. And so that's the thing. Content creators. Level 5 leadership. The best content creators are going to behave that way. The ones that don't, they're not the best content creators. And you look at, maybe we should do this. Maybe we should take the elements of level 5 leadership, being responsible when they're not doing as well, and giving their team proper credit when they are doing well, or giving others proper credit when they are doing well. Because it's the objective reality of things. When the team works together, many of the bigger creators have teams behind them. So yeah. Very, very interesting stuff to think about. We should do that. Take the level 5, make a level 5 test, as it were. Take the elements of level 5 leadership and apply them to various situations with content creators. See how useful this is. And this is the part where somebody calls me a Night Shift Devin Nash ripoff. He should know this too. If he follows businessy type stuff, he should be very, very familiar with this. I wouldn't be surprised if he's brought it up multiple times on his show. Because it's there, it's out there, these ideas are out there, and they're very much worth paying attention to. Alright, I think we've said all that needs to be said with regards to this. Level 5 leadership, it sounds like a synthetic business book thing, but it most certainly applies to content creation. And you can use it essentially as a test to see whether or not you're working for good leaders or whether or not you're watching good content creators. So folks should take proper personal responsibility when things go wrong, but also share the responsibility and the compliments with their team to give people proper credit when things go right. The more people fit that, the better of a leader they are, as paradoxical as it is. Social media is youtube.com/multimediajay, twitter.com/multimediajay, twitch.tv/multimediajay, and multimediajay.wordpress.com. Got some YouTube videos to work on. Also could do some gaming streaming or behind the scenes streaming on here. But there's definitely stuff to do. At least things aren't boring. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay signing off. Thanks for stopping by.
MultimediaJay Radio Style.